And now it's time for our amazing panel on growth hacking in 2025, how to thrive in a challenging economy. I'd like to bring Alex Mostari, founder and CEO of Peachscore, who will also be moderating our panel discussion, as well as also invite the rest of our panelists to join Alex on stage now. Let me go ahead and stop sharing.
Thank you, Payman.
Thank you. And I'm going to go off camera.
Just want to make sure that we have everyone on the panel today. David, I can see Dr. Troy, Ryan, Seren, and Puria. Okay.
Yes,
Puria.
I am here as well.
Okay, hi, Seren.
Hi, everyone. I'm black for some reason. My troubleshooting as we speak.
Right. So maybe we can start. I don't see Puri on the call from Think Plus Ventures, but we can start. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to welcome you to our panel discussion today on a startup growth hacking in 2025 and thriving a challenging economy with limited capital access. So as many of you might know, at least over the last 2 years, startup founders are facing more constrained funding market and increased pressure to generate revenue early. Despite these challenges, many are finding innovative ways to scale, acquire customers, and build sustainable business to raise funding faster, especially considering that investor expectations have shifted compared to just a few years ago. Some are even continuing to build their companies without relying heavily on venture capital. So that's why we chose this topic today to dive deeper into growth hacking strategies that can help founders navigate today's economy, assesses the current state of fundraising market, and explore creative ways to achieve sustainable growth. So we have an exceptional lineup of panelists today, each bringing a wealth of knowledge and unique perspectives to this important topic. Before we begin our discussion today, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our amazing panelists. And let us start with brief introductions, and please share a bit more about your current activities and how you have been involved within the startup ecosystem. From my screen, let's start with Dr. Choi, if you want to go first.
Sure. Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Payman, for having me. My name is David Choi. I'm a professor at Loyola Marymount University. A few years ago, they gave me a very fancy title. I'm the Hilton Chair of Entrepreneurship. I'm also the director of the Fred Kiesner Center for Entrepreneurship. I've been teaching at LMU for 22 years. We've had a lot of success with our students. We're one of the top-rated programs in the country, top 12 according to U.S. News. And I think Payman mentioned the word unicorn. We've had a few unicorns coming out of LMU, thanks to our great students. But we're proud of all our graduates who've done well over the years, whether they're on small companies, social enterprises, or even work as leaders in corporations. So that's my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ryan, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Payman. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan O'Connor. I've been with Carta for about 3 years now. I lead our early stage investor partnerships. So I work with a lot of venture capital firms, accelerators, venture studios, and the like, all in service of making your jobs as founders a little bit easier in navigating the startup ecosystem. Prior to joining Carta, I was at DoorDash for about 3 years, helping them grow out their white label delivery platform called DoorDash Drive. I've been in a variety of roles in the business development and partnerships at various stages. Prior to that, more so on the early stage side. I've advised a lot of startups, have invested as an angel in a number of others, and yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. So on my screen, Sarah, you are the next.
Yay, I'm finally upright. Hi, thank you. And hi, everyone. So I'm Seren Rumjantsev, and I'm the CEO of Tilum. And as already Payman already introduced, we are the platform for angel investors, and the startups very often kind of come across us when they apply for funding in both in angel groups. We also have some accelerators on the platform, some micro VCs. So you might have come upon us before. And our community is growing really nicely. We have already now 105,000 startups on the platform, so it's quite a big volume. And we see this kind of, to say, daily deal flow, how it's going. We see the trends on how the fundraising environment works and so on. So those are the kind of insights that I can share as well, if it comes up in a discussion. But as professionally, I'm basically kind of on the background of entrepreneurship since after university, which was a long time ago. So I've been working in a science park with incubation programs, with accelerators. I also run my own startup. So basically I kind of come to a full circle now. So all sides of the capital table, from startups to government to actual capital. So happy to be here and looking forward to this discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Seven. Puriya, you're the last one.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Puriya. I am a venture partner at Think Plus, which is an early stage fund. We've done about 60 investments. I was there since the inception of Fund 2. Now we're in our Fund 1, and now we're in our Fund 2. We do mostly consumer and enterprise. Check size 3 to 500K initially, and 5 to 700 in follow-on rounds. We've had 4 unicorns, 1 IPO. But I also I was and am one of the early product managers for Walmart Plus, which is an e-com membership for Walmart. And I saw it grow from 0 users to double-digit million. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Puriya. So now that look, we have done with the introductions, so I want to just start with this, that since 2022, raising capital for early stage startups has become much harder. Major startup banks like Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic Bank collapsed, and many LPs face liquidity assets issues, like liquidity issues, reducing their commitments. It seems based on the data to venture funds. Global venture funding dropped over 35% from 21 to 22, and then another 32% decline from 22 to 23. Even with a small 3% recovery last year, the total decline is now 54%. Correct me if the recovery change or the numbers improve. But many much less funding is available for startups. With fewer investment dollars, competition has increased, and investors has also changed their criteria. They now focus more on startups generating revenue early. It is kind of similar to mortgage industry back in 2007. Getting a loan was easy, probably with a kind of driving license or ID. You could get mortgage from the banks, but today you need to extensive documentations to qualify. So given these changes, how do you see the future of fundraising? Will we eventually return to 2019 investment standards? Or is this a new normal? I mean, what are your thoughts? We can start with David if you want to share your thoughts.
Maybe because I'm old, I've seen cycles, right? I've seen the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and they go up and down, and luckily they eventually come back. What's kind of interesting right now is some of the hottest companies, of course, looks like their valuation hasn't gone down at all, and they're raising money. The bigger ones, Series B, Series C. What's of course been much harder are the new companies, right? So I think it's been much harder. You got to find a way to sort of play by the new rules. You mentioned revenue. Maybe some companies do need to get some revenue somehow, or build companies that can generate revenue. And then joining any of these good accelerators like this one and others, I think that seems to still help a lot of companies. So let me just stop there and let the other folks pitch in.
Definitely. Sarah, you want to share because you got Sarah, you have probably over 25,000 investors in your ecosystem. So, how do you see that you could, probably you have seen you're seeing a lot of activities on your end. How do you see the market?
Well, we actually just see the statistics on the specifically on the US data or North American data, and yes, there was a super steep decline from 22 to 23. But on the positive side, it is recovering. So from the investments that are made through our platform, it looks like the investment activity is going up again. Looks like the investors are willing to open their wallets a bit more. So I think it might be kind of turning back on that side. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But at least the 24 was definitely much better than 23 on our platform, and we've seen that specifically. I think that kind of down kind of capital drain or the situation with the capital was also really demotivating startups, perhaps. And we've seen that especially in the last quarter of the last year, the startup activity has increased significantly. It looks not completely sure if it's because they are completely out of money by now, or because they see things in positive light, and it's worth again to apply for capital, but it's definitely kind of we see much more activation on the platform, and we hope that means that the recovery is on the way.
Amazing. Roy, what about Carta? What about you? Because I know that tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people following Cartas, especially like the posts about the data and how the industry is changing over time. So, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like a couple of statistics to help like ground some of the information we might be talking about here. Carta services around 55,000 startups, whether they're extremely early stage all the way through kind of growth and late stage. And so you can kind of think about that as our data set here. One of the things Alex alluded to is that our head of insights, Peter Walker, who I hate giving the plug for him, but is a great follow on LinkedIn. He's emerged as a little LinkedIn celebrity. It might be getting to his head a little bit, so I want to ground him there. But he's really opened up Carta's data set, and he releases a number of reports on a quarterly or a biannual basis. One of which is the State of Private Markets report. I think he just released one on the 2024 look back and specifically deep diving into the Q4 of 2024. I think if you remove 2021 from the equation, we're actually finding ourselves in a very similar environment to 2019. I think 2021 was that outlier, that aberration where valuations went out the window. There was just an immense amount of capital being raised from GPs, from LPs to GPs, and a lot of capital being allocated. I think the fundraising environment right now is a little bit different, and I would actually argue is a little bit different fundamentally from 2019. Very statistically similar in the number of rounds happening and the dollars being raised by startups. But a few high level statistics and kind of something that we took away was it's a bit of a tale of two markets, I would say. From the heights of 2021, you didn't see as much of an impact at the earlier stage as the market went down in 2022, 2023. What we're seeing was like a massive impact to growth stage and late stage companies having, to right size valuations, significant down rounds, really just a tough time to fundraise. In the last year, what we actually saw was a bit more of an impact to the earlier stage. I think things settled in the growth and later stage, and we saw, I would say at the early stage, seed stage startups raised around 12.5% less capital in 2024 than they did in 2023. Series A decreased around 6.7%, not like significant declines, but what we found curious was the recovery at the middle and late stage. So Series B capital invested rose by 17.3%. Series C had a pretty significant increase of 41.8%. So I think there's this like looming opening up of this IPO window that is starting to, I guess, encourage investors to reinvest in those growth and late stage rounds.
No, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights. Puri, what about you and Think Plus? I know that you have multiple hats. You mentioned that you are part of Walmart innovation team and also kind of like venture partner at Think Plus. So did your kind of criteria change from 2019 to today, like when you're looking into the kind of new investments?
Yeah, we've certainly gone more selective. I think everyone on the panel did touch on some of the things I wanted to say that, this is a cyclical business. It will come back in some areas. It has already come back. We're seeing, in some sectors, fewer deals, much bigger round sizes, but now things are just coming back. So I think as an entrepreneur, the focus should be where we are in the cycle and how you should position yourself in terms of what investors are looking, how they're becoming more selective in terms of capital efficiencies, how much runway you have, how much you're raising, and what sort of runway that gives you. So yes, I do think it's coming back. I am seeing a ton more deals. I think with the advent of AI and generative AI, we're just seeing a lot more companies that are both Me Too's, but also we're just seeing a lot more companies with fewer people that have done more just because they could, build, and market and do SEO optimization, et cetera, et cetera. So we've become also more selective because we're just seeing so many deals that are a lot similar in nature. So we're becoming more selective in terms of capital efficiency, but we're also becoming more selective in terms of how do you build a moat and a defensible, durable model, because we've probably have seen 10 times or 10 other companies that are doing Gen AI for X and Y and Z. So that's kind of like what I could add.
No, but that seems that is a good news for companies in 2025. So it seems there's going to be more funding and get back to its speed. My follow-up question is if you look at the industry, it seems that founders now also dealing with another challenge, especially those targeting large corporations with enterprise solutions, which it seems that it slowed down in corporate innovation somehow during economy uncertainty. And from my conversations with some of the executives from large corporations, it seems that I have noticed that when the economy is under the pressure, companies, large corporates become more cautious. That means they reduce the R&D budget, delay piloting new tools, and shift their focus from innovation to sustaining the existing revenue streams rather than exploring new partnerships. Especially with the startups, because they are not, they're early, and the risk of a collaboration with them is pretty high. So for startups, this means securing corporate partnership to drive growth and revenue is much harder. Not only do they face higher expectations, maybe from investors, but they also encounter longer sales cycles and greater difficulties in closing deals with large companies. So, in your opinion, how can founders navigate these challenges? And actually, if this is happening or not, in your opinion, at the moment in the market, and how they can successfully overcome these barriers? David, you want to go first?
Oh,
Or anyone that David?
Sure.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it would be great to hear from Poria, just given I think
Oh,
he
yeah.
went last this time,
Oh,
and he's
sure.
probably
Yeah,
the
we
most
we
relevant.
can
Yeah.
suggest. Sure. Puri, you want to go first?
sure, sure. I'm happy to. Look, one of the things I think it's important to realize with partnerships, especially with big corporation, I mean, being at Walmart, we're Fortune 1, with 2 million plus employees. Um, I think there are three things that entrepreneurs should really focus on or understand. One is, we're going after must-haves and not nice-to-haves. See, we have this big machine that's kind of rolling, and we're not looking for the next fancy thing to invest in or to partner with. We're always looking for basically making our own operation more efficient, and either that's gaining more revenue or cutting costs. So because of that, we're looking at must-haves and not nice-to-haves. So if you're a fancy drone company, it's amazing and you might gain a lot of market share, but it may not be suitable for us. So entrepreneurs approaching big companies, they need to understand basically what are the dilemma of that big company at a given time. That's one thing. Second thing is there has to be a lot of ROI driven conversations. I see many companies pitching to Walmart that sure, it might solve a minor, small problem, but the question really is what's the ROI for us? And that's not something that I see a lot of companies approaching us with. Third is it's very crucial to find a sponsor, or what I call it influencer mapping within big corporations. So if you're approaching a company, the thing is Walmart is so massive. You have these store operations, logistics, e-com, innovation, that you need to find the right person who experiences that problem and who's willing to sponsor you within this, big ecosystem of Walmart or any big company. It's not just let me pitch to someone who is high up there, because he or she may not be exposed to the problem that you're solving and the magnitude of impact that creates for both customer operation, or product. So those are the three things I'd say it's very critical to focus on as an entrepreneur trying to partner with startups. But what you did mention, which I want to emphasize, is in bad times, everyone's trying to cut cost and maximize revenue, and because of that, you always have these tail ends of the markets that companies are always willing to invest. For example, I know Walmart, just like any other big corporation, is trying to understand how they can leverage Gen AI, whether it's like on-device processing for their in-store operation to maximizing their funnel conversion in e-commerce. So just understanding that dynamic and kind of getting into the head of these big corporations would really help you navigate those discussions.
That was very interesting insights. Roy, you want to go to next?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would reiterate and agree with a lot of the points that Portia said. I'll take like a little bit of a different angle and kind of give my thoughts on, how you might approach it. Honestly, I think starting small is really the most important thing. I think Portia kind of alluded to it. Find that champion, that's really experiencing that problem most acutely, and really try to understand it a little bit more, and have like really interesting conversations with them, build rapport, but really be able to solve the problem that they are facing. I would say like the one thing that I see happen most is people coming in with too broad of an idea on how they might partner, and less focused on let me solve one problem at a time. And so like the old adage of crawl before you stand, before you walk, before you run, I think is probably the most important thing. It's like prove things in a stepwise function, and then you'll slowly build clout, build credibility, and be able to kind of get to the point where you want to get. Um, Understanding short-term incentives, again, in a defensive environment, you're going for cost cutting, or you're going for efficiency. So like really focus on that short-term ROI, and again work towards a little bit later. I would say structure pilots in a pretty flexible way. I think obviously a paid pilot is the goal, but at least in how I work, like I'm managing a bunch of different things, and And if you can prove the value to me in a defined period of time, I'm going to be much more willing to work with you on that and say, hey, in 2 months, like just show me what you can do, and then I can take that data and then I can kind of work on your behalf again, finding me as an internal champion. But yeah, I mean, and make the process as easy as possible. I think that's where you kind of get complicated in like asking for too much or trying to loop in too many cross-functional partners. Like start small would be my recommendation.
No, no, thank you so much for sharing that insight. Seren, how about your experience or your observation in this topic?
Uh, I mean, I would kind of need to refer back to the fact that the value needs to be there. So if you do provide value, then you will still find those customers. Now the question is, if it's a nice to have, might be that it would be helpful for you to have a bit of a repositioning exercise, because nice to have it for one sector or for one customer type could be a must-have for another type. So really kind of taking that step back and doing that exercise all over again to see where does my product fit better if the current kind of market is not working out for me. So drones could be for Walmart, drones don't make sense, but I don't know, energy companies tracking their power lines, that could be a real value offering. So really to kind of take it back one step, do that repositioning or positioning exercise and see maybe that will help you kind of get to a better segment. And I think maybe one of the things I would also add is that when the big corporations are cutting their R&D, then that is a huge opportunity for small companies because that means that they are not putting money into this kind of experimental things. You are smaller, you are faster, you are leaner. You can do those experiments. You can actually work out those R&D products that the corporation, once they recover, would be interested in using it. And in that case, when they see already a really good product out there, they wouldn't do the R&D themselves. They would rather purchase that. So it's kind of like a preparation period for you, an window of opportunity. Of course, it's very dependent on how much capital you have. So you can't do much if you
Right.
don't have any. But still, if you are well capitalized and you have the resources or a really good idea, then I think it's worth taking.
Yeah, that's very interesting observation. And less R&D, that means more opportunities for startups, to grow faster and leverage that kind of like, there's a pros and cons of course, for everything. So David, how do you see, because I know that you have worked with probably hundreds of startups, and you're accelerating a lot of companies at LMU, and some of these companies, I'm sure that they have been a unicorn, they are growing, they're Series A, B, C, and probably working with a lot of large corporations. What is your observation today?
Along the discussions we're having right now, selling to large corporations takes real skill. And, I think, unfortunately, some people actually don't know how large corporations work. And so having a harder time selling. So I think it's useful to learn how that works, right? So, I mean, if you look at, for example, how Oracle sells or how Salesforce sells to corporations, there's a lot of lessons to learn, how they navigate through the hierarchy of a company, for example, right? So I think there's something to learn there. I'm close to my former students who run companies. And I do agree with what everybody said, which is if you can demonstrate value, and these days it's often cutting costs, right? If you can use AI to cut costs, I think companies are more willing to listen to you. So I think that often works. And then then there are companies, of course, you should target that want to spend money, right? And depending on what your business is, like I mentioned, there are some AI companies these days that got $400 million valuation and raise $100 million, and they need to spend in the next 2 years, right? And depending on the company, you may have a service that they want, right? And they could be great corporate customers. So I'll look at some of those companies. I mean, even at LMU, we're trying to partner right now with a AI well-funded company to do certain projects together. So I think there are opportunities.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now, let's consider that with the consideration of that raising money from venture capital is harder. companies facing with longer sales cycles to collaborate or sell something to corporations. And so I think growth hacking, which is a topic today, has become an even more important topic for companies to burn less money and scale faster. So there are two questions here. First, do you think the definition of growth hacking has changed compared to 2019, like before pandemic happens? And second, what new strategies might work today? And in your opinion, what growth hacking strategies or tactics no longer work? What are your thoughts? I mean, we can start from you, David, and this time, like circle back.
Sure. I'm actually really curious as to what people have to say here. When we used to teach growth hacking in school in the old days, like 5 years ago or 7 years ago, it was about using, interesting new technology, right, to uh, attract customers quickly, right, using certain marketing techniques. And then I think that hasn't been used as much. And then although that was like a very interesting new skill set 6 years ago, everybody sort of has it too these days. So it's a little bit of a product versus marketing argument. There was a time when if you knew certain new tools in marketing, you could have some advantage, right? But it seems to me that today there's so many companies that are pretty good at marketing. It's hard to go viral on social media these days. So I feel like what helps companies do well is just good products. And so the emphasis changed a little bit to having good products and then utilizing sort of old proven skills, right? So finding the right target customers and finding a way to customize or personalize, improve customer experience, and all those kind of things, right? So that's kind of what I see, but I'm really curious to what other people see.
Of course. Ryan, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not on our growth marketing team, and so I wouldn't say I'm the like best person within Carta to talk about this. But I would agree with David. I think it's very much within the context of like what investors are expecting in terms of growth, and there's less of an emphasis on that large scale growth at whatever cost, and more of an emphasis on that sustained growth at a reasonable cost. And I think that's where you go back to really focusing on your customer. I mean, I think one of the things that Henry, our CEO, has really never wavered on is that like your customer is your best friend. The more you can learn about like what they think about your product and what they want more from your product, what works, what doesn't. I think they're your biggest community, to be honest with you, and they're the most important community. And so instead of like placing an emphasis on like how can I grow and acquire new customers, it's how can I really like satisfy the needs of the current customer base that I have, such that I can, it goes back to that like guerrilla marketing tactic where it's word of mouth. It's how do I just create the best product and satisfy the needs of like the core customers to then grow beyond there. I don't think going viral is a strategy anymore. I think content marketing is really interesting, and I think you could probably use a lot of the AI tools out there to decrease costs in terms of like the generation of content. But I would go back to the nuts and bolts of growth, which is focus on your customer base first. Make sure that you're building the right product for them and adding on the additional features that they really want before you really scale and overpromise things, because like the one thing about growing too quickly is then all of a sudden your ICP is a bit more mixed, and you have all of these different stakeholders asking you for different features, and you can't really quite focus on like what the core features of your product are that you're building. And so I think that's where like that, you know, thoughtful approach to growth is really grounded in.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. Puriyo, what about you? What are the thoughts here?
Yeah, totally agree with what everything that Ryan and David mentioned. A few things I would add is one, we are seeing a lot more regulation especially in the consumer subscription area, where, if you're offering a free trial, if it's more than X number of days, the customer needs to give a direct consent. You need to send reminders before, you charge the card. So I think I am seeing a lot of regulation. I am seeing a lot more scrutiny from investors in terms of what's your CAC and how much are you spending on growth, and and it's great that you have been able to grow, your top of the funnel by X, but what does that mean in terms of your conversions? And third, what I would add on top of what everyone else said is, and I think Ryan touched on it, is I think with the advent of or with Gen AI and AI just in general, we can do a lot better targeting, both in terms of our ads, but also in terms of our SEO and in terms of our content. Right now, our ad efficiency has increased a lot, just because we just know how to target the right customer at the right time and show them the right content. And that's really mostly because of AI. And that has obviously, been, very fruitful for us, but that's kind of like what has changed since 2019 in my view.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thank you so much. And Sarah, do you want to add anything to this?
I mean, I think there have been really important things. I really like that David's thought line of going back to the the
Right.
goodie and oldie, good old stuff, and then of course the Ryans as well. That the customer references are really a superpower. So this is something that is very often kind of underutilized, like building relationships with new customers versus building or kind of strengthening the relationships with existing customers. I have to say that we have never been into growth hacking at Delum. We kind of always taken the approach of really focusing on the needs of that specific segment and being the best for them, and from there on, just kind of that word will go out. But of course, that depends on the industry. So in some industries, that network is much stronger, or that effect is much stronger in, for example, in consumer. But yeah, like don't underestimate how much power your customers have.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And actually, my follow-up question is about customers, is about like some of the points that you, Purya and Ryan and David, you brought up. If I want to shift the gears to discuss some of these growth, hacking strategies based on what you mentioned earlier. We are in an economy where startups have less funding and tighter budgets, right? Typically, investors are against paid advertising and artificial growth boost, at least for early on, like pre-seed, idea stage, even seed round. Over the last, let's say, 4 years, organic growth and community-driven marketing. I think this is a very interesting term that I think Puri you brought up, have gained significant popularity among founders and their investors. We have seen in the past successful kind of like examples like Tesla, Notion, maybe Figma, even maybe Carta. I mean, Ryan, you can just share if that was the case for Carta in the beginning from inception phase, which leveraged such a strategy by building a strong community around their products to scale and grow faster. And what are your thoughts? Because like, how do you think stores can build a strong community around their products without breaking the bank? So, so that is a question. Maybe we can start with you, Saren, if you want to share some thoughts here.
But yeah, we definitely never broken the bank for ourselves. Yeah, to kind of say that that community being super important is that the community initiative in our case actually came from our customers. That was kind of a few years ago, and we hadn't really thought about it ourselves to create this kind of like structured community environment for them. When one of them asked, we have exactly the same struggles as the other customers, and we're not necessarily competing with each other all the time. We're more like looking into collaboration. So why don't you, as a kind of one central place which connects us all, take this kind of leading role and help the customers to share their experiences, and that's how we created the community club for our customers, where they can come together, discuss specific topics, see how they solve them, and share those experiences. And that it's been, I think, really useful to have that kind of way of communicating with others, and especially when you have a more complex product, when it's difficult to set up, or might be very kind of powerful features, lots of complexity, so on. Then that kind of assistance on how did you set it up? Like you're very similar to me. How did you do it? That has been really helpful to onboard them faster and make them understand the product faster, and that reduces our costs on kind of support and help, because they help each other. and we very often do those references between the customers when we see that one of the customers, and that also helps to retain the customers. That when we see that the customer is struggling with something, then we try to refer to someone who we know have solved something similar, some kind of issue themselves, or has done some outstanding kind of way of solving that problem. So we try to connect them already kind of on the backstage as well, so that they would get their problems sorted, their issues, and they would continue using. So it's a really powerful way to keep them on the platform as well, because that complexity often comes at the cost of customers being.
Of course, very interesting kind of example. So Ryan, what about you at Carta? So how do you see, first of all, back to my question, but what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think Carta has really always had that focus on the customer, and so that's the community we've garnered and paid attention to the most. And I would say that's the thing that our CEO focuses on the most. I think he has around like 10 to 15 customer calls a week, whether that's on the cap table management side or the fund admin side, because really that's the way that you understand the needs of the customer. In terms of my role, it's a little bit different. I like to find kind of like tangential, non-competitive partners that are experiencing and trying to solve for the exact same thing, and build community that way. I think we all have like our different superpowers, and so I think in real life connection is the most important thing. And I think starting with the base of where you're living, if you can't build that community, then you're gonna struggle to build any community. But I do think like organic social media content and having like a genuine presence on LinkedIn, on X, I would say do as I say, not as I do, just because I genuinely steer away from being extremely public in that manner. But I mean, it all comes back to like building genuine connections and being able to like provide introductions to your network and ask for that in return. And so I would say community building it costs nothing if you're really smart at it, and nothing but time. And so you have to like allocate an appropriate amount of time to it, and not like make that your full-time job, because it can very much spin into that, and it is a danger to kind of think that like just because I'm out in the community, I'm doing something and I'm building something. You have to allocate an appropriate amount of time to it. So yeah, I would say in real life, and then I'll always have that like online social presence, and putting out thoughtful organic content would be really helpful.
Oh, very good point. So David, you want to go next?
Yeah, just quickly.
Sure.
Two quick things. One is we had an event a few months ago, and a friend of mine was a speaker. He has a $600 million company, and students asked him, "How do you generate revenue of $600 million? How do you growth hack?" And then he said, "Well, we try to grow slowly, all the time." That was his answer. And then I'm just reminded of one article that my thesis advisor wrote, I think in the 80s. And the title of that HBR article was "Good Customer Service is Good Marketing." So I'll just end there.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
And you can still find the article.
Of course. So Purya, what about Think Plus? How do you evaluate? Because I know that you guys are continuously evaluating and starts to invest. And do you really kind of care about community-driven kind of like a strategy? Let's say call it go-to-market strategy or business model of these companies might impact. How do you see this, and how do you rank or evaluate this type of kind of like?
Yeah, look, I agree with everything everyone said. I'll just add a few things. One, I mean, to answer to your question, yes, we definitely do care about, go to market. We're not growth oriented investors, so we're investing, very early on. Most of the time, founders don't even have the customers. We do care about the channels in which founders are using. What's the efficiency of those channels? But what I go back on what everyone said, and I want to emphasize is it's so critical to understand your customers and your initial ICP. Because that's when you know where they're spending most of the time, what they're doing, what's their psyche, how are they making decisions. And that's probably the most important and critical thing to understanding how to get your first 10, 20, 100 customers. Because it could be Reddit, it could be Instagram and TikTok, it could be, writing, generating content on LinkedIn or Medium or Substack. It just all depends on who your customers are, where they're hanging out, and what they're doing. I've seen even founders going to Reddit uh, communities and just writing things in comments, or going to like Quora, um, writing a question, logging to another account, answering the question incorrectly, because what they've noticed is people are more inclined to correct others than to actually answer the question. So when they go there, they, create a prompt, go answer it incorrectly, and they realize that there's so many people correcting the answer, which
Yes.
means that, they're getting so, but I think none of that really works unless you truly understand who your customers are, and what their psyche is, when they're making decision to, take your product. But just wanted to add that on to everything everyone said.
No, that was very interesting. Actually, I have a follow-up question. Like we can start with you, Puriyo. So how do you see AI? Because we didn't discuss, you mentioned, I think you or Ryan mentioned about AI solutions for from marketing to, I don't know, growth hacking strategies, from content creation to video creation, from customer acquisition to customer retention. So how do you see that? The
Yeah,
role of AI
see,
in this?
we're seeing a lot of, for example, like AI tools that do experiments. For example, and this really comes down to optimization. For example, if I show you banner X and banner Y, and I change the content or the color schema or even the location of the button, and then kind of I want to run an experiment, now it might, or previously it might have taken us weeks to say, well, what variation should we test against each other, and what sort of point of optimization should we look for that makes us, we should change our design or content, or when we show the banner, what we show. And right now, I'm just seeing a lot of AI tools that just allows us to do that, on the background. So we just basically specify, I want to check this part of my banner, and see for customers that come to our homepage and search for tires or search for home appliances, what sort of messaging resonates with them, or what sort of color and what location, what steps makes most sense to them and gives me the most, the highest conversion. I could do most of that with AI, both from the content generation, image generation, to even optimization of where my button should look like. But those are coming down to mostly optimization. What I would most focus on, which I think that's your core audience here, is like entrepreneurs who may not even have customers. The key is just finding that product market fit and not focusing too much on growth hacking, because that could give you the illusion of product market fit. Whereas, just focusing on organic channels that gets you the customers early on is by far the most important thing that entrepreneurs early on can and should do.
Having said that, Poria, what's that tool you're using?
We're using OmniMonk. Like
OmniMonk?
that's one of the, yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll take a look.
Yeah.
So David, you want to just continue on this topic now that you brought up that question?
Well, I would actually just agree with what Poria said, which is, there are a lot of really good AI tools, right? And we try to use a lot of those. But for example, I don't know if you've come across a tool called, and I'm not advertising, promoting at all, something called Clay is really good for sales and business development. I think uh, the point being there's so many good tools out there for that helps the sales process that some of the companies might want to use.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sarah, what about you? I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you
Yeah,
have
I
any
think
thoughts on this
AI,
topic?
yeah, AI tools definitely have their place on like various fields. The just need to find the suitable ones and see how you can utilize them. And when you're looking at these kind of early stage companies and especially when they're still kind of building relationships with customers and trying to kind of show off their expertise and their kind of positioning on the market in general, then I think I would also say that the AI can be really helpful in kind of polishing everything we have to say. But sometimes it's also worth keeping that genuine kind of tone and genuine thoughts. And I think that really stands out when you see somebody has written their own thoughts in their own words. And you can, yeah, definitely, absolutely. I always use AI to polish up, or AI is super helpful in writing like negative customer feedback responses in a polite and very kind of considerate way. So those are the use cases where you should use it, but also keep your essence in what you do with those tools.
That makes sense. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Ryan, what about you? Like, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, Carta leverages I would say more so in like a human in the loop environment, all with the purpose of like optimizing and delivering the best customer experience. And so we have a lot of fund administration clients, you have a lot of cap table customers. Like how can you consolidate like all of the actions and the notes from that in a way that like a human in the loop can look at it and have it consolidated in a way that they might actually forget or lose it. In a different way. We do ingestion and document reading and stuff like that. And so I wouldn't say we've been like on the pioneering front in that, but probably for a reason. I mean, I think it all depends on the state of your company, right? If you're at the point where you need to really put the like, pedal or your foot on the pedal, like an AI SDR company is really interesting. If you're training up an SDR team pretty quickly, there's a really cool company called Hyperbound that can kind of train. There's like all sorts of really amazing tools, but I think you just have to figure out like when to leverage them and when it makes sense. Would agree with everyone else in saying like you should just have those conversations yourself. There's a lot that gets lost, I would say, in those AI tools, but like use them to remember, their kids' names and their
Yeah.
birthdays or any like little elements that you can kind of capture that makes it like a little bit more personalized.
No, no, that completely makes sense. And we can discuss about this for hours, but I got a message from Paymon that I have to finish it, wrap it up fast, so we don't stay behind the timeline. But before we finish, I would love to ask you to share your final thoughts. Any recommendation that you have for founders to navigate these challenges, especially given this shift. What kind of key mental framework or strategies do you recommend to founders to continue pushing forward with their dreams in 2025? And we can start with Puriya if you want.
Sure.
Share your final thoughts.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to what I said earlier is that just understanding where we are in the cycle and positioning yourself for success is critical. But I wrote a post a few months ago with a few students I have at Stanford that I'm mentoring on 10 pitfalls that startups or mistakes that startups make. And I could refer folks to read that article on my Medium. But a few things I'd say is understanding that early on distribution doesn't buy you engagement, so distribution at all costs is not helpful. Understanding how not to overestimate your market size just because you read a BCG article that said X number of people are facing Y problem. Understanding really the causes behind the problem you're solving and the kind of like all the touch points and being able to distinguish between your buyers and users and different persona that touches your product. And then lastly is really understanding what it would take to build a category defining venture scalable business within that market and kind of working backward. I do see so many companies, honestly, like I would say on a daily basis, that I say it's an interesting idea, but it's such a niche market. It's an interesting idea, but it's just so hard to build a venture scalable business. And look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with building a cash flow positive business, but you just have to understand what makes a VC model work and what we're looking for, because we're not looking to invest 500K and then double the money. We're looking to invest 500K and 100x the money, and that's the kind of models we're looking for. And if you are pitching to VCs or you're pitching to us, it's just important to understand that's what we're looking for. And then you have to be able to kind of have a path that says, look, this is how we're going to get to 100 million ARR. So those are the final things I'd say.
Thank you so much, Puya, for sharing all this stuff. Sarah, you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the kind of biggest, the most important things is that everything that is difficult and all these kind of ups and especially downs are much more easier to tolerate when you love what you do. So just to kind of believing in your product and believing that it is improving someone's lives or someone's processes or making a difference to someone. That is kind of the mental mindset that will help you go through a lot of like hard times, and surrounding yourself with the team who has the same mindset and who are all kind of who all believe in your product, then that also makes it so much easier. So I would say just believing in yourself, believing in your product, and knowing that it will get better, even if it is tough times now, and then just keep that positive and just work your ass off. Pardon.
Very good advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Ryan, you want to go and share your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough because whatever I've said, I think kind of always rings true. I think being passionate about what you do is extremely important. So don't start a company just for making money. Start a company because you really want to and you want to solve a problem. It's one of the top things that VCs are actually looking for and evaluating you on. I guess provide like an alternative perspective to Poria and say that like venture capital isn't the only route that you have to go. Like bootstrapping, I mean, if you're doing anything scientific, there's tons of grants out there. If you can generate revenue early on, like I'm hearing more and more about like VCs actually emerge that are investing in what's almost like a PE level business where it's like, hey, you've built something that's generating cash. Like that's great. We're not expecting these like crazy levels of returns, but we do want a certain percentage of your business. And so I would say there's like no one size fits all on that. Like VC is a great avenue for a certain type of business, but it's not the only avenue.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so be mindful of that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing that. David, you are the last.
Okay, yeah, I would say don't give up early just because 10 investors said no, right? You can learn from it. You can keep developing a product. And I have a student right now, former student, who was able to raise about $10 million in funding through a couple rounds, and he had to talk to 400 investors, right? And resilience is not just about being tough or being rugged. It's about being able to relax, sometimes make fun of yourself, prayer, meditation, having good friends, right? I think those actually help build resilience. I think a glass of beer also sometimes helps. And then also, I think Serena mentioned a mindset, but recognizing that we live in very unprecedented times, right? In human history. If you think about millions of years of human history, and the idea that we can dream and pursue our goals, that just happened last couple hundred years. So just understanding that we're very lucky, and the fact that we can pursue our dreams is I mean, we've already sort of won, in many ways. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing your final thoughts. Again, thank you so much, David, Ryan, Seren, Purian, rest of the people on the call, for you guys, especially sharing your thoughts with everyone today. We hope to have you again as part of our future panel discussions. And again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.